However, welcome to my review of Carry On Sergeant from 1958, directed by Gerald Thomas, and of course the first film in the Carry On series. As yes, we are back once again, ready to discuss this film. The very first film in the Carry On series, as I say. So yes, very interesting to see this film. Saw it a few weeks ago now, and there won't be a spoiler warning for this discussion. I won't get into specific plot details really at all. Just be more my general thoughts on this film. So you can rest easy actually. If you haven't seen this film, you don't need to worry this time around about the spoilers. And so yes, with all that said, let's dig into my fairly brief thoughts, on this film, and just my kind of first impressions, of seeing this film, my general thoughts on this film, and kind of how did I feel about this film, watching this as the first Carry On as well. It's very cool to see that, kind of, I guess starting so. I was wondering, I guess how this would be. It's very interesting. I'd heard very little about this one. Not really too talked about at all. Other than, it's the first one, and it's cool to see all the different, kind of regulars who appeared first, in this. Who was kind of there from the start. Obviously, Kenneth Williams, Charles Hawtrey, Hattie, Jacques as well. Are in this film. Terry Scott, he did not return. Around a decade, kind of up the caliber that he returned, but he was obviously in this film, so I guess one of the originals, but obviously Kenneth Connor as well, being the main one that kind of is given more of a role as well, but he was in this film, so those are the main ones that are kind of in this series to start with, with this film, Carry On Sergeant. Obviously Kenneth Williams is my favourite Carry On star, so it's great that he was in obviously the very first one, but it's fascinating to see this film, I guess, kind of see how this is, it's very much, I was thinking, would essentially, would this be, and I kind of do this with every franchise that I'm yet to see the very first one of, how does it compare to the rest of the series? Is it, kind of right off the bat, a Carry On film, for example, is it really, kind of, does it feel like that? Is it for example like Dr. No, where for me at least, they got it so right straight away, and it kind of obviously they kind of, some of the tropes were not in, for example, Dr. No, but most of the ingredients were there. Kind of the signature stuff was there, and certainly it's a series, Bond, James Bond, for example, that kind of gets it right straight away. Star Wars as well. Kind of like in a bottle, kind of thing. And I guess this is not one of those cases, although I did enjoy this film. It's very, very nice to see, very charming film, and pleasant viewing. I did enjoy this. I did find it, quite funny. It wasn't, I guess, one of the real Carry On experiences. It seems like this was very much its own thing. It was a nice kind of pleasant, British comedy, and then obviously, as we know, they did, because they never planned to do it anymore really, Carry On films, they did look at it, and then from there they went on to make, Carry On films, so it's obviously a film that, at least for me, I was kind of finding it to be a very pleasant film, but not kind of, didn't feel like a Carry On film really. It was very much a completely different experience. Obviously, we have, I guess one of the things that's definitely still almost identical to some of the Carry On films is Charles Hawtrey. He kind of did specialise in not minor characters at all, to me at least, but I guess never, the lead, you could say, was kind of this strange, kind of a bumbling character, really, that he played, that was kind of there, doing his own thing, separate perhaps to the rest of the film, you could almost say, in the best of ways. So he was kind of given, because all of the regulars really in this film are given, lesser, kind of roles in terms of, they're not the leads of this film really. Kenneth Williams is kind of just, more of a background character, unfortunately, but Charles Hawtrey, it didn't really taint the fact that he was, kind of more of a background character, because, he did specialise and, elevate those roles, but, for example, seeing Kenneth Williams, in this film, and, for the very, kind of backseat role that he's given, it's very strange and quite sad to actually see that he was more of a started out more of a essentially that wasn't appreciated, I feel, or utilised to what he could have been, and then it would be actually seeing because I saw all these Wanted, Order Now and Regardless as well, all those ones I've seen them all it would take quite a few films, maybe regardless, perhaps, where it would get to the point where Kenneth Williams was really, really utilised to, his kind of, his greatness, and not that he wasn't great, in these films, but he wasn't really given the meaty roles. Really, Hattie Jacques as well, in this film, actually saying it, she could have been given a lot more to do. It mainly focuses on, obviously, William Hartnell, who's really good in the film. The sergeant, the kind of retiring sergeant. Obviously, the plot is that he's this retiring sergeant who is essentially given these national service recruits and to train them up. Obviously, at this camp, and it leads to a lot of funny moments, obviously, and gags. It's great to see, especially the kind of the physical training, parts of the film in the middle segment, and then running through, just practicing there, and how that progresses. That's one of the best things about this film, is seeing them all in action. But we have as well, it kind of balances out that and the kind of sergeant life, behind the scenes, and Terry Scott as well as a sergeant in this film. But yes, Sergeant Grimshaw, him going about his business, and we see all that, kind of discussions there, and as well we see discussions, in the kind of rooms, the recruits are, kind of stationed, where they're kind of sleeping and, getting up and getting, changed and all this, kind of stuff. So that's the kind of main three areas that it kind of, balances out between, and we have different romances in the film that are kind of placed, and they do develop mainly for comedy effect. One in particular, obviously, Shirley Eaton, which is great to see. Her in this film, different Karen films, and she is, her romance is a bit more of a serious one, but there's some as well. A couple of the kind of comic relief romances in this film work to an extent, but not. I wasn't too invested in that, and overall, to sum up my investment, it's very much. I enjoyed it. I found myself liking the film. Obviously, it's a fine film. Solid. I guess experience, but it wasn't one that I was huge on. I guess, and it's not. It's one that I expected to kind of love necessarily. But I was kind of expecting a bit more from this film. It's cool to see different regulars in this film and how they started out. And it's great. I do appreciate this film. Obviously, Peter Rogers, Gerald Thomas from the get go were working together in this film. Obviously, that would end in '78, I believe, and yes, obviously, a lot of the regulars are in this film. Obviously, Kenneth Williams, Hattie Jacques, Charles Hawtrey, as I say. Terry Scott, it would be a while before he would return. But yes, Kenneth Connor as well. Obviously, he was really good in this film. He's going to definitely, he was definitely a presence. He carried a lot of the film. I guess one of the main things it really does focus on for me, too much of the the sergeant, and just because that would be great. Another film if it wasn't kind of a film like this where it's more of a a comedy, sketch-based perhaps, visual gags and all this. When we're seeing the sergeant, and stuff, especially when he's separate to the recruits, it's not that funny. It's not that investing really for me. And if it being this really full-on drama, of a retiring sergeant, that would have been great. But it wasn't. It was obviously all these different characters. A comedy film like this with the recruits, and it could have been better. It could have been. Perhaps much more gag-based and focusing pretty much entirely on them, and it would have been a lot better for me, and it would perhaps just really make it much more of a comedy than a comedy drama, or a drama with light comedic touches. This film really is, to me at least, and some moments that really kind of go on, and not too much laugh out loud moments really. In fact, most of the first half. Really, it hasn't really got too many laugh out loud moments at all, and it's more of a light chuckles, polite laughs kind of thing, and pleasant. It's a film I always liked, but it wasn't, it wasn't this hilarious carry-on film, and it was, it had some really funny moments, especially with Charles Hawtrey, Kenneth Williams later on in the film, and obviously Kenneth Connor as well. Different moments where he was really giving some some good acting there, and just elevating the material, and just that kind of quirky, quite bizarre character that he played in some of the early Carry On films. He definitely brought a lot to the film. Looking back on it, it's definitely he was one of the highlights, I guess. And again, not most of the characters aren't utilised as much as they should have been. And Hattie, Jacques, and these characters are just kind of they're not given enough really to shine as what they could have been. But I guess this being the first one, and then not really knowing what the series would be, it's been to be expected. It's not a film where they set out kind of have all this in mind. This would be a series, a carry-on experience. It is just kind of called Carry On Sergeant, I guess, and it's kind of, yes, it's a carry-on film, but it's not. It's not. I guess meant to be, a carry-on film in that regard. But it was nice to see. For all the kind of misgivings I had, kind of slights I have on the film, or kind of I guess the kind of underwhelming feeling for me a little bit. I did enjoy the film. I would recommend seeing this. Again, not getting into any spoilers, but it was a nice, pleasant film. The ending was nice. It's a nice film. It's a very, it's a charming film. I did enjoy it. I did like William Hartnell in the role as well. Of the sergeant. And I liked everyone in the film. It's just it's a film that the way it's kind of structured and the way it's kind of designed is a bit kind of to the detriment of the the kind of potential of the film, and the laughs and the investment, and definitely though some big lulls in the film, and moments where, or stretches of the film that I wasn't really that invested in. It was just kind of it was okay kind of thing. So that's very much what the film is for me. It's an average film. It's an okay film, and certainly not a bad film by any standards to start out with, but more of a one that I enjoyed seeing for what it was. Kind of the fascination of it, and to watch a light comedy film that you can't go wrong with. I guess none of the carry-ons I've seen at all have been dislikes. I've seen 20 so far, roughly. So I'm well aware of the later few. Probably not going to be films that I like, but majority of the series being films that I like, and a lot of them that I really hold with high regard. That's great. So Carry On Sergeant, well, it's not one of my favourites. I did enjoy it. I thought it was an okay film, not much to say. It's a pleasant film to watch, and certainly fascinating to see it as the first Carry On film. 58, they were really banging them out, for a few years, and certainly, yes, to see, well, that was quite into the 70s that they were making quite a few, each year. So this kind of did not differ from that, but it's very much a very different, Carry On experience. Overall, my final rating for this film is a 60%, dead on 60. It's an okay film. I enjoyed it, for what it was. A light film, a pleasant, kind of British film that was very warm at times, but not, as good as it could have been for me personally. It's just my overall respect. Great to see all the cast members, but then none of them are really at all. None of them are kind of given, what they could have been and what they would go on to kind of be. Kind of lead roles, for example, Kenneth Williams being, the carry-on Kenneth Williams. He wasn't at all, given that chance in this film, and quite a few of the early ones, and Hattie Jacques as well, goes without saying. She's one of my favourites in the series. She wasn't given enough in this film. Charles Hawtrey, even then, could have been given more, but I think he's the only one that really stands out as, it doesn't really matter that he wasn't given as much. But again, you can't really, floor it too much for that. This wasn't, the kind of carry-on series as we know it. They didn't plan on making, kind of carry-on films with this one. They just they made this one. Peter Rogers, Gerald Thomas, obviously they were teaming up for this film, but they didn't have that in mind. So that's interesting to kind of know, and I guess it kind of it softens the kind of the blow of the fact that I have all these different things that I was a bit disappointed with, but because it doesn't really matter too much. It wasn't. You can't really floor it for that, I guess, because it wasn't meant to be a carry-on film. But yes, it's called Carry On Sergeant. So yes, reviewing this film, and I did enjoy this one. So I praise this one. I recommend seeing it. I personally don't love this film, but some people would, and that's great. I guess check it out if you've not already seen it. If you have seen this film, what do you think of this? It'd be great to hear. How would you compare this? It was a fascinating one for me, one that I enjoyed, just not for me one of the best by any standards, and it was certainly quite strange to see a film like this in the Karen series. It did not feel mostly at all like any of the Karen films, even Karen Nurse. Constable as well, always one's teacher. It didn't feel quite like any of these films, but it did. I guess it felt a bit like Nurse, more so. But still, it's a very much a standalone film, really, and to view as that, it's just kind of, it's a light, enjoyable, nice little British comedy film that is great to see for all the regulars, and seeing Kenneth Williams. It's a real treat to see all these actors this early on in the series, and to see who was there from the beginning. Terry Scott as well. Quite interesting that he was a minor role in this, and then he would return quite a bit into the series. But all the regulars like Kenneth Connor, Hattie, Jacques, Kenneth Williams, Charles Hawtrey, they were all here in this film from the get go. So, and they would go on to be real regulars and defining Carry On actors. So yes, great to see this one. 60%, an okay film. I wasn't huge on this one, but it was nice to see. So there we go. That's my thoughts. What do you think of this film? And being the first in the Karen series, it was obviously a pleasure and a treat to a privilege to watch this film as well. Once again, it's been great going through this set. So yes, that's my thoughts. What do you think? It'd be great to hear. And as always, let's continue going through these films on the channel. So yes, as always, take care and thanks for watching.